Lining up all the guests, and we got a good one lined up right now. Bob Wischusen, the voice of the Jets, also hosting NFL Live this week on ESPN, and we are the home of Jets football here in the Capital Region, so you hear Bob Wischusen all the time. Bob, Rodger Wyland in Albany, good morning.
Hey, guys, how are you?
I'm good, Bob. Thanks for a few minutes. I'm really grown very tired of the Ryan Fitzpatrick story and whether or not a deal is going to get done sooner than later, driving me crazy. It's been on the table for months. Can you give us an update of where, in your opinion, that stands right now as we inch our way closer to the start of training camp?
Well, in my opinion, this has always just been my opinion. It's a stalemate based on the fact that neither side has anywhere to go. The Jets don't have anywhere to go at quarterback, and Ryan Fitzpatrick's side knows that. And Ryan Fitzpatrick has got no other offers. The Jets know that. So both of them really have no reason to move. But I don't think this has ever been quite as acrimonious as it has been portrayed. I think agents like to use whatever they can, public sentiment or perceived anger on the part of their client to try and get some more money out of it. So, I think if I had to imagine, I have an agent, I have conversations with my agent about where I want to be, and I have to imagine that Ryan Fitzpatrick probably told Jimmy Sexton, his agent, look, I had a great year with the Jets. I want to be back with them. And I would imagine Jimmy Sexton probably said, no problem. We will get you back there. But let me do my agent thing. You just don't say a word. You let some public pressure build on them. You don't need to sign the deal until August. Let's be honest. Last year, he wasn't the quarterback until week 1 of the preseason after the first 3 weeks of training camp had already gone by. And he still set a record for the number of touchdowns thrown. If he signs this deal in late July or early August, he comes back in basically at the exact same time as he did last year to take over, and he had a great year. So maybe they can get a few extra $1 million feel-good money out of the Jets if you let this fester for long enough, knowing that they want him back because, he had a great season last year, and they don't want to turn this over to Geno Smith in his absence.
Yeah. To me, Bob, it's just a matter of meeting in the middle here somewhere because I get both sides of it. If you are Ryan Fitzpatrick, you do not want to be, making backup quarterback money. And at the same time, you're the Jets going, all right, he had a really good season last year, but his overall career numbers are not good. I don't think he's a long-term answer at quarterback, and we don't want to pay him, $18 million a year or even close to that. I get both sides of it. So at some point in time, they must meet in the middle and get this thing done. How does that sound?
I would think that would probably be true, although, and I think you're right. The Jets aren't drafting Christian Hackenberg. They didn't draft Bryce Petty last year with the idea of, signing Ryan Fitzpatrick to a 5-year deal.
Right.
He is a short-term answer, a stopgap at the position, no matter how well he played last year. And that is the way financially that they're treating this, and I think have to treat it. And that's just the business end of it. As good a year as Ryan had last season, they still lost their last game. They still didn't make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He, in an 11-year NFL career, has still only had one season as a starter where the team he quarterbacked finished above 500, and it was last year. He had never had an above 500 season, obviously has never played in the playoff game. So how much money, when you look wide-angle lens at that resume, do you give to a player who has never taken a team to the playoffs, has had one above 500 year as a starter, and no one else made an offer to? So I'm not sure how much the Jets are going to come up. That's why I think that ultimately he'll probably get a little bit more money than they're offering, almost like, kind of a pat on the back. Hey, we really do want you feel-good tip money. But I don't think they're going to go all of a sudden up into the low to mid-teens in the millions. I don't see that.
Bob Wischusen with us, voice of the Jets and this Ryan Fitzpatrick saga. How about this? How about they go to camp and Geno Smith is lights out? Is there a scenario where, all right, here's Geno Smith just having a phenomenal camp and Ryan is not? Can you make a case that all of a sudden we've got some controversy and Geno Smith ends up bypassing Ryan Fitzpatrick and he's the guy?
Yeah, that would have to be on a scale of 1 to 10. Geno would have to be at about an 11. Fitzpatrick would have to be at about a 4, based on last season. Right. It would be very hard for the coach to look, especially his veteran offensive players like a Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, in the eye and say, you know what? No matter what happened last year, we think Geno gives us a better chance to win than Fitzpatrick.
Bob,
I can't believe that would happen. I don't think the gap between the two in training camp would be that big. I mean, really, ultimately, that really is the only thing that's pushing Fitzpatrick with, some type of a sense of urgency to accept whatever the offer is and get into camp. Because, granted, last year he did take over when Geno got decked a few weeks into camp, but you don't want to let the kind of quote-unquote, incumbent from last year or, potential presumed starter if you're not there to get 2 or 3 weeks of practice in while you're continuing. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's not, he's not Dan Marino. He can't hold out forever and just automatically walk in and play whenever he wants. There is going to be, at some point, a drop-dead date where you have to sign or else. But I can't imagine that comes before you're at least a week into training camp.
Bob, from one saga to another, what's the latest on Muhammad Wilkerson? Is he going to play under the franchise tag? Is he going to hold out to avoid getting hurt? Is he going to get a long-term deal? What are the relationships like right now between the Jets and Wilkerson's camp?
Well, that's another tough one. That's another business decision. And I do think he'll eventually, obviously, sign and play under the franchise tag. I do not think he's going to get a long-term contract, especially with where the money has gone. And if you look in the NFL, Google or pull up a list of like the top 15 highest paid hand-on-the-ground defensive linemen and look who they play for and count up the number of teams on that list that are winning teams. Most of those guys play on teams that are either non-playoff teams or maybe in the case of a J.J. Watt are borderline playoff teams that have no chance even if they make it in to make a run. It's just not a position where the good teams invest a lot of money long term. It's a position that the good teams, for the most part, have guys that are working still with incentives, with the idea that I'm still going after the money. The number of guys at that position that signed the big money contract, like an Ndamukong Suh, and then are not nearly the player that they were after they signed that contract, scares some teams away from giving big money to a hand-on-the-ground defensive lineman. It just does. And the Jets have a Sheldon Richardson and a Leonard Williams that they still control for several more seasons. So, A, they could probably lose Muhammad Wilkerson and still have a very good defensive line. And B, history suggests it's not wise to do what the Bills did with Mario Williams, what the Dolphins have done with Sue, what the Lions did with their guys, what the Rams have done with their guys. Those are the teams that give big money to defensive linemen. The Steelers don't. The Patriots don't. I mean, the teams that are perennially there with a chance to win do not give. And even look at what Bill Belichick did with, a couple of guys like a Richard Seymour. When he was on the verge of having to pay him, what did he do? He traded him. What did he do with his young guy last year? On the verge of having to pay a young, big-time defensive lineman. Trades him before that bill comes due. And so that's why I don't see Muhammad Wilkerson getting, especially with what Fletcher Cox got, $60 or $70 million guaranteed. I don't see it.
And because of that has Wilkerson even more fired up on that Cox deal that you just brought up, Bob. And I don't think his complaint is about, it shouldn't be anyway, being underpaid. What's he going to make? $15 million this season? Yeah, I mean, come on.
And they could tag him again next year, which I can't imagine they would. And he'd probably be up in the $18 to $19 million range. So, they could control him for the next 2 years for an average of probably about $17 million. But, sooner or later, you need some type of a long-term solution. Either he goes somewhere else. Trading him at this point, I don't really know what you would get for him coming off of a broken leg where he's on the tag. You only control him for 1 year. Is a team going to give Muhammad Wilkerson what he wants, which I'm sure is an 8-figure contract with a ton of guaranteed money, and give up a pick at the same time? It's just it seems very unlikely that there is any, at least short-term solution other than him playing on the franchise tag. I'm sure that's what's going to happen this year.
Bob, what about the schedule? If you had a chance to, the Jets may have the hardest schedule at least through the first 6 weeks. What's your thoughts on how that schedule sets up for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because your opponents are predetermined. So we've known since basically the 1st of January who their opponents were going to be, who was home, who was away. You just didn't know the batting order. And when you finally see the batting order, it's like, oof, that's a rough start. I would say if they could ever manage to be 4-4 through 8 games, which means winning at least 1 or 2 games where they will probably be a points underdog, where you're going to be saying, ooh, that's a pretty surprising win. They've got a couple of these teams at home. They've got Cincinnati, playoff team, obviously, start the season at home, and they've been good in home openers. They've got Seattle. Never easy for a team to make the cross-country trip. They've got them at home. So if you can win a game against a team like that at home, and then you beat the teams on your schedule that, a couple divisional opponents where it looks like you have a good chance to win, who knows? But if they can get to 4-4, then the second half of the season they'll be in it the whole way through, and they'll have a chance to make the playoffs. But if they struggle coming out of the gate, it's very, very difficult to rebound from 3-5 or 2-6 and make a run. So no matter how easy the back half of your schedule is. So, to me, it's about surviving and treading water the first 2 months, and then the last 2 months, who knows? I mean, you have a chance to do something.
Bob, we'll get you out of here on this. You mentioned that the Jets have been good in season openers, especially at home. They have the Bengals at home this year. Sheldon Richardson suspended for that season opener, but it seems like he and the Jets got off light with that punishment, doesn't it? That seems like a win for them.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, based on the fact that he had already had a suspension for substance abuse, I guess they could have whacked him more significantly. But, no, he didn't ever end up, having to deal with criminal charges. So, I guess they probably took that into account. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what the process is by which the NFL arrives at these disciplinary decisions. But yeah, I'm sure that, they knew some type of a suspension was coming, and you can't get less of a suspension than 1 game. So he got really the bare minimum suspension that he probably could have gotten. I think they're probably pretty relieved to think that they're going to have him in the first month of the season when they arguably could have been without him for a month to start the year.
And Bob, we'll let you go, but I do want you to keep close tabs on Christian Hackenberg. Right, I'm a Penn State guy. I think in due time, Christian Hackenberg is going to be a really good NFL quarterback. That is a Penn State opinion.
Well, he'll be coached at a different level now than he has been the last 2 years. Let's put it that way.
Looking forward to it.
So we'll see how it works out.
Yep. Hey, Bob, always a pleasure.